Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Ask Shane Anything right here on Sifted Games at SIFTD.net. The show's kind of pulling double duty this week. We weren't able to do Game Face because Matt is not feeling well. Hopefully, he'll be feeling better for next week's show. I'm not 100% sure on that, though, to be perfectly honest with you, though. We'll see how it goes. But we are here to do Ask Shane Anything. I'm recording at nighttime, which I never really do for this show because I'm just trying to fit stuff in whenever my schedule permits. So the lighting's a little bit different, a little spookier in this week's edition of the show. Anyway, this show happens because some of you awesome people are pledging at $7 or more per month at patreon.com/sifted. Because so many of you guys are doing that, that's why this show happens. Technically, we're nowhere near the goal we're supposed to hit to do this show on our Patreon, but I do it anyway because I love doing it and I love y'all. So anyway, we have great questions again this week. Go to sifted.net, go to the header, ask some questions. We always need more. I'd really appreciate it. Let's get to this week's questions. First, we have a question that's actually from two people. They asked similar questions, and I kind of combined them together into one, and that is Jaylin and Bachby. With big companies like EA and PlayStation learning the wrong lessons about games as a service after failed projects like Dragon Age the Veilguard, will the older generation upper management ever understand or anticipate what gamers really want? Since they'll never be the ones fired for making large, devastating financial mistakes, they can say whatever they want with confidence without actually knowing what they're talking about. Okay, that question's not loaded or anything, Jaylin or Bachby. I do appreciate it, though. Here's the thing. Like, those old people that you're talking about that are in these positions of power, they're us. And I don't think that they're making decisions that will make them happy or us happy. And I know you don't want to believe that they are us, but they really are. People who are executives at gaming companies, most of them anyway, are people like us who grew up loving games. Now, there may come a day, maybe in the next 10 or 15 years, where you get people running game companies who really don't care about games at all, but I don't really think we've reached that point yet. Most of the people who are executives in the games industry right now are people like us who are older, 40s, 50s, late 30s, who love video games, but they're also realistic. I've mentioned this before on Ask Shane Anything, that we are dying. We're a dying breed. And I know, Jaylin, I think you've mentioned that maybe you have kids or whatever. And I don't even have kids myself, but I have tons of nieces and nephews. And if you spend any time around them at all, I mean more than like an hour at some family gathering, if you hang with them and try to have fun with them and play with them, you figure it out pretty quickly that they're nothing like us. They have no interest at all in buying a video game, playing it for 30 or 40 hours, finishing it, and then getting another game that they play for 30 or 40 hours and then finish it. That's not what they do. They don't talk about that stuff. Like, I don't hear my nieces and nephews, like, talking about, like, Zelda and being like, hey, I got stuck on this one part. Oh, I did too. What did you do to get out of it? Oh, like, they're not like us. Isn't there a song that says that? They're not like us. They're not like us. They're different. And what these executives are doing, they're trying to position their companies to be successful in 10 years. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of the people who are maybe a little older than me, a generation older than me, like my parents, who were really the first generation to kind of embrace video games, those people are retiring now. Or a lot of them are gone. They died. And that's what's going to happen to all of us. And I hate to break it to you, but if you're in your 40s and 50s, you're 15 or 20 years away from dying. I hate to be so morose, but it's the truth. And if you're running this gigantic corporation that needs to stay alive for forever, which obviously will never happen, but that's the idea. They need to stay alive forever. You can't look at what we want and cater to us. You need to cater to us just long enough until we die. Again, I hate to be so blunt, but that is the truth. We are going away. And the things that we like and the things that we want are not going to be relevant all that much longer. I know I'm one of the only people who talks honestly about this stuff that's in our age group. Everybody else whines and complains, boo-hoo, they don't make stuff for me anymore. It's just the natural order of life. People are born, they live their life, and then they die. And then they're replaced by people who aren't exactly like them. And that is all that's happening here. And these executives, look, I'm with you. I wish every game and every dollar that was invested in game development was put into projects that I want. That would be great. But here's the thing. We enjoyed that for decades. Every game being made for us. And now it's time to turn the page, and they need to start making sure that their business is going to survive when we're gone and no longer buying games. So I hear you. Now, more specifically about games as a service stuff, I really hear you. Because I think executives look at games as a service as a cash cow. Because if you have two of them, you don't have to do much else. Look at EA. I mean, you use them as an example. All their money comes from games as a service. They make all their money off Apex Legends, off Ultimate Team, and Madden, and FIFA. They don't make any money off just releasing single-player games. And then they try to release one, and we don't buy it. It's like you can make up some goofy excuse for why you didn't like Dragon Age the Veilguard. Oh, there's a voice actor in there I didn't like. Or there's a few lines I didn't like. If you want games like this, you got to support them. You got to buy them. And if only 1.5 million people played Dragon Age the Veilguard, then most of y'all didn't buy it. And so that's what you get. If you don't buy the games that you like, they're going to start giving you games that you don't like. It's simple supply and demand. Econ 101. So, yeah, like, I don't like games as a service. You don't like games as a service. But when EA doesn't make a game as a service and people turn their nose up at it for whatever petty reasons that they gave it for why they didn't want to buy it, this is what you get. They start making other stuff that people will buy and will spend money on. And EA knows that because it's making all its money on it already. So we say this all the time. Bet with your wallets. If you want BioWare to survive, then go buy Dragon Age the Veilguard. Yeah, there might be a couple things you don't like about it. Get over it. Is it better than, like, not having games at all that you want? Because that's where it's going to head if you don't pay for games that you like. So we can talk about this till the cows come home. The bottom line is, if you want stuff, you got to support it. If you don't support it, it's going away. Okay, next up we have a question from Kevin. As someone who has interviewed a lot of people throughout the years, I wondered if you have any do's and don'ts for interviews. Oh, do I ever? A big part of my job was preparing my guys to go out and do their jobs and teaching them how to do great interviews. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but here are some very quick tips that I will give you to do great interviews. The first thing you need to do is before the interview starts, warm up the person that you're interviewing with. Find some stupid thing to talk about. A lot of times it's sports. I hate to say it, but if you can figure out if the person likes sports, it's a very easy thing to connect on. If not that, just ask them what they've been up to lately or what games they've been playing. Whatever, just break the ice so that you have the back and forth going. Once you do that and the interview starts proper, always lead off with softball questions. It breaks down their defenses. Everybody, when they're about to be interviewed, they're nervous that someone's going to ask them something that either they don't know the answer to or something that they don't want to answer at all. So always start the interview with a couple softball questions. Let them talk about themselves. Let them talk about something that they're very good at or something that they did very well. Bring it up. Say, hey, you did this. You did really good at that. Talk about it. It will break the ice immediately. And then slowly over the course of the interview, start bringing the real questions in because now they're diffused. They're like, okay, this guy or girl is giving me a shot here to talk about things that I want to talk about. Slowly move into the stuff that maybe they don't want to talk about or stuff that's maybe a little more touchy or maybe things that they don't want to talk about, but maybe you can get it out of them after you've built that rapport throughout the course of an interview. And then when you're done, always try to button it back up. The last question should always be an open-ended question to let them say what they want. So at the end of it all, they feel like they had a fair shot to portray what they wanted to portray in the interview. And I guarantee you, if you follow these very simple steps, by the time that interview's over, they're going to say to you, that was a great interview. Because they feel like, you know what? I had my chance to say what I wanted to say, but you also got some stuff out of me. And they also know that that is the objective of the interview. So I think if you follow those very simple tips, you will have great interviews going forward. And you can apply that to anything in life. Any conversation you're in, that's a great way to have an awesome conversation. Okay, next up we have a question from Khalib, Tweleye. What's your opinion on the brotherly shove? In light of the Eagles Super Bowl win, do you think that this play gave them an unfair advantage? As a former offensive lineman and now rugby prop, I think it's interesting to see a strategy shift from creating space for the ball carrier to just locking in and driving together. My opinion is that it's fair play and that there's definitely a counter for it. Well, Khalib Twalai, I don't know how much football you watch. I'm guessing not a lot. American football I'm talking about. Because the brotherly shove or the tush push has been a thing in the NFL now for like 3 years. And for those of you who don't know, the tush push or the brotherly shove, because Philadelphia is a team that invented it, is basically where the quarterback takes the ball and everybody gets behind him and pushes him to gain a couple yards. And the Eagles have become amazing at it. Like, literally, there was a point in the Super Bowl, and I was at a Super Bowl party with Eagles fans, where the Eagles had the ball first and goal at the 5-yard line, and as soon as they got there, I said, 4 tush pushes. Don't do anything else, just 4 tush pushes. So a lot of people think the play is unfair, because the Eagles came up with it. It's basically a quarterback sneak, where your teammates are pushing the quarterback forward through the pile of players. It's ingenious and something I can't believe that other teams have not thought of before now. Now, here's the thing. The NFL has gone through this with the competition committee over and over again, trying to figure out if it should be legal or not. And time again, they're like, yes, it should be legal. Now, you say there are ways to stop it. I don't know. That, to me, is the big issue with the tush push or the brotherly shove. Can you stop it? Like 1 out of 8 times. Yeah. Like, every once in a while, a team stops it. Literally, like 1 out of 8 times. Particularly against the Eagles, who are really good at it, it's like 1 out of 10 times. So, can it be stopped? Every once in a while. Does it generally get stopped? No. So, I'm just going to say I'm not a fan of the tush push or the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it. I think it's legal. And I don't necessarily have an aversion to teams that do it because it is legal within the rules, but I do think that the NFL should look into removing it. And I do appreciate, though, as a rugby player, that you can see the parallels there, because you're right. It basically is a rugby scrum, just pushing the scrum a yard or 2 down the field. So I understand where you make that connection, but personally, I feel like it cheapens the game. Like, again, the Eagles got the ball at the 5-yard line, first down. I didn't think run. I didn't think pass. I'm like, if you want to win the Super Bowl, just tush push that thing 4 times and score a touchdown. And it does, I feel like, take a lot of strategy out of the game. I feel like when you do stop the tush push or the brotherly shove, it's mostly just luck. Okay, our last question for this week's episode comes from the Sandman. Couch co-op. I know it's a dying / almost extinct feature, but I feel Nintendo with its family-centric consoles is keeping it alive. Couch co-op is my preferred choice for gaming because it's far more social. What's your fondest couch co-op gaming memory? Will it ever disappear forever? Okay, the Sandman, the first thing I'm going to say is that Valentine's Day is tomorrow. So your question is right on time. Because the one thing I will say is that, like, Valentine's Day, if you're looking for something to do with your significant other, sit down and play a couch co-op game with them. Try to connect on that level if you can. So this is an appropriate time to answer this question. Now, couch co-op for me, I'll be honest, I have never really done it that much, because by the time it started becoming a thing, I was already like an adult, and like I wasn't living with like a brother and a sister or whatever. Like, I was living with my siblings during like the Atari 2600, NES, SNES era, not anything after that, where couch co-op kind of became a thing. So the closest thing I can relate to couch co-op is back in like the NES, Atari 2600 days, where we would play games together and we would take turns. Particularly with the Atari 2600, a lot of those games were made just like arcade games. So you literally just die constantly. And that makes it fun. If you're sitting around with like 4 or 5 of your friends and you take turns, like, some lives last 5 seconds in some of those games. And so you're constantly passing the controller. As games became more involved and like it wasn't about dying, it was about staying alive in video games, I felt like couch co-op kind of lost significance for me. And again, I wasn't in a position where I had like brothers and sisters around or mom and dad to play couch co-op with. I've kind of missed that whole era, is what I'm saying to you. Now, will it go away? No. And the other thing I would say too is the other closest thing I had to couch co-op is the arcade. Going into an arcade and playing like the X-Men machine or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles machine where there's like 4 or 5 people playing at once. That's probably the closest that I got to couch co-op throughout my life, but otherwise I kind of missed that whole era. Now, back to your questions. I agree. I feel like Nintendo is keeping it alive, but it's not just Nintendo. It's also third parties who realize that Nintendo is the place for that stuff. So a lot of times with third-party games, they don't always come to Switch, but if your game is a couch co-op game, you can pretty much guarantee that that publisher is going to figure out some way to release that game for Switch. So I hear you, Nintendo is kind of keeping the vibe alive. And you're right, without Nintendo platforms, I do wonder if they would go away. But I do also feel like the advent of online play is taken away from couch co-op. If you're an adult, are you going to drive over to your buddy's house and sit on the couch and play something with him? Or are you just going to go pick up your controller, boot up Xbox Live or PlayStation Network or Nintendo Switch Online, and just play with them virtually? I think most people have just decided at this point they'd just rather play online than have to get up and go somewhere and all that rigmarole. I do agree with you. Playing online is not the same. It definitely loses something. Even if it's just that elbow in the ribs every once in a while from your buddy or your sister or whatever, it adds to it. It definitely changes the environment, the vibe, the tone of playing video games with somebody else. But I just think out of necessity, and let's be honest, I feel like people in general are kind of becoming antisocial over time and don't want to spend time with other people, which I think sucks. But I think it's part of the culture. I just think society has changed a lot. I think video games have changed a lot. And I think all that contributes to the fact that couch co-op has kind of gone away. Do I think it will go away ever, forever? No way. There's always going to be people being born. There's always going to be a 4-year-old brother and a 6-year-old sister, or 2 tweens, or whatever. They're going to want to play games together, or the parents are going to want to be able to play along with their kids to kind of get their kids into a hobby that they enjoy. I do not think it's going to go away. I seriously, I think till the end of time, there will be couch co-op, but I do think you're going to see less and less games in that subgenre. Okay, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Ask Shane Anything. I still can't promise anything really about when Game Face is going to happen. Matt's still not feeling well, and I just kind of told him, like, hey, when you're ready, let me know. And so I'm just kind of in a holding pattern. It does kind of suck, though, because I had that whole episode ready to go, and he texted me like an hour before I was about to leave. So I put a lot of hours into pre-production for that episode, just for a lot of it to end up going to waste, honestly. It sucks. Because what's going to happen is by the time we go to do the next episode, some of the topics that I worked on are going to be irrelevant, or there'll be bigger topics, kind of like the PlayStation State of Play that just happened. And a lot of my work is going to go to waste. But what can you do? Matt's not feeling well, and he didn't feel up to doing the show, and that's that. So, as always, stay tuned on our Twitter or at Blue Sky. We'll let you guys know as soon as we know anything. But I can't promise you one thing for sure. I'll be back next week for another episode of Ask Shane Anything. Big thanks to all of you guys and girls who are pledging at $7 or more per month at patreon.com/SIFTD. You're the reason this show happens, but I appreciate all our patrons. Even if you're just giving us $1, just because you guys are awesome, it all adds up. It all makes a difference for us. So anyway, have yourselves a great week. We'll see you back here on Ask Shane next week.